Welcome everybody to this webinar that we're running tonight. HELI is very proud to be a Business Alliance partner of the ICE. For my sins, I'm also a director on the ICE board and the treasurer. So I get to see a lot of the inside workings of the ICE. I'm pleased to say that I think it's this year is going to be, it's been a good year for the ICE despite all of the challenges. And I hope to see you all at the annual general meeting. So that was a plug for the AGM coming up. But in the interim, I've really enjoyed the sessions over the last 2 evenings of the virtual international panel of experts, or the VIPoE as we're calling it. And today we had the workshop earlier from Peter Russell, and now we've got our turn. So we hope we put something together that you will enjoy. And I'm very, very proud to present the Dean of HELI, Professor Clive Smallman. And I'm without further ado, going to hand over to him, and I'm interested to hear also what he has to say. So thanks, Clive.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, fascinating array of people here, I think, and it's nice. Then I'll switch over to my PowerPoint in just a moment or two. This kind of picks up some themes that Peter and I put together in a paper that went to another virtual conference. Where is it? Where are we? Wednesday. It was yesterday, with our friends over at the APAC conference in Hong Kong. Actually, it was Tuesday when I did that presentation, and that was all around the importance of new technologies, and particularly artificial intelligence in marketing for hospitality. And that's kind of when Alan asked me if we could put this together with Peter. I kind of thought what might be of interest to people, something that's perhaps a little bit different from what you might be getting in terms of education. So I thought I'd do something around technology rather than purely just learning and training. And so that's what I've put together. And really what it's about, and I'll just get rid of my little logo there so you can see more clearly. What I'm just going to talk about just for a little while, and then we'll get you to do something. So we're not going to just have you sitting here listening to me all the time. We'll have a little look at learning technology and engagement trends, and talk about that. Why is this an important subject? It's an important subject because maintaining engagement online and maintaining engagement in e-learning, be it corporate e-learning or be it academic e-learning, is absolutely vital, because maintaining that the attention of students, engaging with them is an absolutely vital part of ensuring that you get effective learning from people. That's why this is so important. We need to use the technology. A lot of e-learning still, and a lot of early e-learning was little more than putting people, well, this experience that you're having now, really putting talking heads onto video, supported by some, in some cases, very good online course materials, in some cases, very poor materials, varying between what you get on LMSs, very sophisticated LMSs, compared with some of the stuff which is basically a little more than PDFs, which are uploaded to the cloud. So we've now gone full swing, and we're getting to some very exciting technology. We've got a lot of exciting technology out there. And that's really the theme that I wanted to talk to. And the first theme really to talk about is one that's very close to my heart. This is where my career actually started out. Sad to say, nearly 40 years ago now. And this was during the second wave of artificial intelligence. And in fact, I was actually a specialist in machine learning. And why AI is so important is, at the moment, less so the front office, although I was at a presentation the other day at APAC where they were doing some experiments with robots for customer service, which was very interesting, to say the very least. But really, AI is important because AI, as some of you will know for frequent internet users, which most of us are nowadays, AI is involved in what are referred to as bots. And these AI bots, which are automated processes
Clive, I think we've lost sound.
I'm glad you said that, Jane, because I thought it was just me.
No,
Clive,
I asked Lee to check with there's yeah, other comments came in.
Good.
That's cool. Right.
Oh, you've plugged yourself back in. Okay.
No, I've got a battery failure. That's all right. That's okay. I'll just continue with this one. That's why I have two microphones. So where do people lose me? At artificial intelligence or just after?
You're just talking about bots, Clive.
Bots. Thank you very much. Very kind. Thank you, Craig. So bots are going to take about 85% of customer service interactions by 2020. And so that's a huge amount when we think about the volume that customer service interactions are at the moment. Now, when we talk about that, we talk about when you're booking, when you're actually trying to book events, when you're trying to do all sorts of things online. And a number of business training events, business training content, about 20% is going to be created by AI. Now, the thing that's going on in the background is the sheer quantity of data that we're generating in society generally and in commercial organizations. And that's basically what AI is, if you've not really ever looked into it. AI is basically smart search algorithms coupled to big data. That's the short version of it. Having worked in it, I can tell you I used to crash computers trying to analyze the data. And that's what is enabling big organizations to leverage it and to move into learning and development. And so we're seeing personalized training content to suit needs because we're looking at how well somebody's doing in a particular training course. We're looking at learning patterns, we're looking at learning styles, behaviors, what sort of roles they're in. So learning can be adjusting to meet all of those. So what we're heading towards, I think very shortly, in fact, most prototypes out there doing this now, is AI-enabled personalized learning. So that is what's coming now. It is still very much developmental in corporate learning, but it is on its way. And I'm involved in an exciting new project in another part of my life, which is looking at this, tying several of these technologies together, but certainly starting with AI and machine learning. Another thing that's interesting, I think, particularly from the point of view of marketing, is geofencing. And that's basically where you've got an electronic border around a particular zone or area, and organizations will use geofencing to track the movements of its target customer base. So within large buildings, large parks, you can start to work out where people are and what they've just had a look at and how they've worked. Now, it was a bit of a marketing gimmick to start with, but we're beginning to see it being used in learning and development in terms of actually positioning people and starting to market to them in that. So geofencing, very new, but it's on the way. Now, the other side of AI is the data, where we get big data, analytics, and decisions are made. And really that little chart is meant to indicate what that actually means. Big data is organized in computing terms, of course it is, but it's not organized in analytical terms. So what analytics does is it takes data and it begins to organize it. If that organization goes further, then you get it over and you're able to make more decisions. I looked the figure up the other day through Googleplex, and this is a very large number. Apparently 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are created every day. That's a huge quantity of data. It's a ridiculous quantity of data. So what we want to do is to, in learning in particular, is to take the information that comes out of learners' activities, their performance, and begin to look at whether or not there are insights for us in there too. And so the idea there is we begin to refine training to improve performance in particular areas. So we're seeing that too. And of course, in the background, and at HELI, we certainly do this, we're beginning to use learning analytics to better understand how we can develop our own courseware and our own teaching. So that's the sort of space that data analytics is in. Now, the next one, I think is, excuse me just a minute, I've got a bit of a fault there. All right, I will come back to that. There we go. The next side of things is what I call is self-directed learning, the learning experience platform, which are on the rise, and there are a number of products out there that actually do this. And what this is technology that sits above what you would call normal learning management systems, and actually begins to enable students and other forms and other trainees to actually begin to look for more information on what is going on in their world and what they want to learn, enabling student-centered learning more and more. So tying back into big data and so on and so forth. Basically, they are more intuitive and flexible versions of learning management systems like Canvas and Blackboard. And so what this allows students to do is to come out of their learning management system and go and look for other learning experiences which aren't tied in to the learning management system. And this is where the educator becomes a curator of content. And we're beginning to see this more and more. Now, the ultimate in doing that, I would say, would be to enable us to actually hook in to virtual reality and augmented reality. And this is already on the rise. A friend of mine is a leading authority on virtual reality and augmented reality, and this movement is growing pace rapidly. And this is where we're seeing this particularly is where conventionally we've said that you might put people into real life situations to practice skills. Now, you may have started to put them into simulators, but simulators of anything significant are particularly expensive. So what we're starting to say is, can we do three-dimensional simulation? Can we do virtual reality simulation? And the augmented reality is where we add artificial intelligence into the virtual reality to create real-time changes in the reality that people are experiencing. In other words, it starts to augment that experience and starts to actually build off what it is they're actually trialing. We're already seeing a marketplace for off-the-shelf e-learning. We all can see that the range of products that's available for people, online content marketplaces, is huge. Not just edX, not just Coursera and Udemy. There are all sorts of little platforms popping up. There are small commercial platforms such as Teachable, Kajabi, very small platforms, but people are marketing all sorts of e-learning through the various content marketplaces. So increasingly we're seeing libraries of learning being available to people, and organizations are actually beginning to buy access to those sorts of libraries. So this will increase, and it's to do with the amount of data and information that is available. So people are increasingly going into smaller and smaller niches, narrower and narrower specializations, and specializing in very specific parts of what conventionally would have been a part of for example, a university curriculum. It may be that there's a particular specialist that you would pick and start to work towards, and you can get their content off the shelf. So that's very interesting, especially from the point of view of just how you would deal with issues relating to quality, compliance, and meeting standards that you need to meet within those types of learning scenarios. Now, I've just given you six very different technologies. Now, the signs are, and I've just become involved in this project myself, the signs are that those are beginning to come together, and they're beginning to come together to what I would refer to, and forgive the expression, as the holy grail of learning. Most of what we do at the moment is to do with conventional learning. So really from school age, perhaps a stretch preschool age, moving into adulthood beyond school, towards university or vocational training or professional training, and on till perhaps sort of mid-career. That's where conventional learning has mainly applied. And now always in the background, there's always been what's referred to commonly as the university of the third age for older people to actually continue their learning. But it is taken seriously, but to an extent it's never been taken seriously and never become organised. But what is driving changes in the span of which we do, perhaps what we might better call professional learning or formal learning, is that there's a couple of things going on. Linda Grattan of the London Business School talks about the 100-year life and the 80-year work life, and that is coming. That's quite clear. And there are other scholars who are saying similar things. When we start to think about that, we have to start about where people's careers are going. And Charles Handy, the eminent Irish academic, many years ago forecast the idea of portfolio careers, and Grattan picked that message up. And so we're beginning to really start to see the need to really have a managed idea around genuine lifelong learning. So not quite cradle to grave, but nearly much. So we're seeing, perhaps over-exaggerated in the lower picture, but nevertheless we will see the lifespan of learning grow out. And what we're beginning to see, and I'm an example myself of this, is people holding a portfolio of careers. So my example, I've used myself, is I started out in applied research and development, in artificial intelligence research in several different industries. I then moved to become an academic. Briefly, I went back out into industry as a project manager, then back to being an academic. And then I moved out into the world that I live in now, which is a combination of being an academic, a professional advisor, and an educational technology, I don't know what you call me, entrepreneur, I suppose, but I'm interested in that space. So it's that you would not normally recognize as a conventional career. And that is what we're beginning to see in terms of lifelong learning for many more people. I'm not unique in what I do by any stretch of the imagination, but we're beginning to see more and more people in that role. Now, what we've got to do when we talk about lifelong learning is we have to start to think about the sort of competencies that are involved in that. The use of languages, where does the language sit in terms of there are all sorts of different people coming into lifelong learning spaces. We need to understand that we have people who are literate in different languages, I might add. We need cultural awareness, and expression is absolutely vital, because a lot of these learning platforms will not be constrained by normal geographical borders. We need to be much more entrepreneurial in our outlook, and the work of the late Sir Ken Robinson talked about that in terms of creativity, and also an American scholar who has looked at the idea of world-class learners in terms of bringing ideas around different forms of entrepreneurship into school. So certainly into secondary school, and perhaps even earlier than that. There is a need, and I think if we look at worldwide politics just at the moment, there's certainly a need to talk more about civics, and the civil society is coming in to enable learning to be properly situated and to give people a better understanding of personal social learning. One of the reasons I go about that, I was actually asked the other day by somebody, a major issue I think at the moment is that we don't put in nearly enough effort into actually teaching people how to learn. It sounds a very trite statement, but it's true nevertheless. I don't recall being taught how to learn, and neither do many others. And above all else, the other two things that are driving us down the route of thinking about learning competencies in lifelong learning is that a lot of it's going to be digital. A lot of it is going to be digital, and there is a huge push towards STEM. science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But beware, the late Sir Ken told us that we also need to keep an eye on creativity as well, because that is equally as vital to STEM education. And some of the movements we see worldwide personally concern me, and I know they concern others. And just to close up the talk part, and then we'll get you to go off and do something. What does a lifelong learning platform look like? It looks something like this. This is one of about half a dozen graphics I could picked up off the web. I just picked this one up because it looked reasonable. What you've got here is you've got an academic education platform, which is what we are all familiar with if we've done any form of learning or are involved in learning at the moment. But you also have non-academic education platforms, and they're being filled by the likes of even Coursera, edX, Udemy, and other products. And you also have public service platforms helping people look at politics, civics, and all sorts of issues like that. Now, they've got to interact, as we can see here, with a whole range of other pieces of information in terms of data center authentication, particularly around individual authentication and you controlling your data. That's a major issue, but also around resource management. I'm going to work through all of them, but how do we pay? How do we interactively communicate with other people? And then the very simple things, online learning. So actually, what we're talking about here is this is what we recognize at the moment as the LMS. That's actually a very small part of this whole deal. Then up above, we've got to start to think about how we provide service to people in all of those sorts of areas. Then from that point, we have an incoming resource library, which feeds in. And we also need to be increasingly aware of how we recognize achievement, but also audit it. And we're seeing the rise. Some of you will be familiar with this idea. We're seeing the rise of badge companies, and I've been looking at one recently, the name of which is going straight out of my head. But the basic idea is that we give awards for all sorts of different competencies. And that's actually become an incredibly successful organization. Then you've got to tie it into how on earth do we actually keep track of all of this? And then we start to get into blockchain technology, and all bets are off at that point. So there is a huge technological challenge out there for us as learners. So those are just some ideas that I wanted you to just be exposed to and think about. And what I'd like to do now is to, we've got about 20 people, I think. And what I suggest we do is I'd like to split probably into two groups of 10. Alan, where are you? Unmute yourself, or can I?
Hi, Clive, back again.
Oh, are you back again? Excellent. What I want to do now is, rather than just hear me spout on, I'm happy to create some time to answer questions.
Sure, absolutely. Listen, just to let you know that there is some challenge with the breakout room, so we will go to Plan B and use the whiteboard to note any discussions or whatever.
We will use the whiteboard then.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, and I did post a little note a little while ago for everybody to have a look at, and that is, if you've got any questions, feel free as part of the interaction today, post your questions either in the Q&A panel or in the chat functionality. And we have a comment as well as, I guess, a question from John Daly. He's saying, what a great point about teaching students how to learn. What about teaching lecturers how to teach? Any good online blended programs you can recommend? Well, I'm sure there's plenty we can recommend. There's actually one right there. But some comments there, Clive?
I think that one of the issues we've got is in the psychology of teaching. And there's a very substantial debate, and there's sort of two sides to it. There's a group of very learned people who say that we understand learning styles and we understand learning preferences, and we should arrange teaching and learning around those sorts of ideas. At the same time, there's another group of psychologists who say that's all complete bunkum and we shouldn't be doing it that way. We should just be doing structured teaching. Now, it so happens that the person who leads the learning styles and preferences movement is David Kolb, who some people will have heard of, and he's now retired, happily to Hawaii. I understand why he's happy being in Hawaii. But he created the learning styles inventory, which is a famous learning styles assessment tool, which is highly flexible. But Kolb think in terms of learning as experiences, which happens to be the way that I think of learning. All learning, be it formal or informal, is a formal experience. And basically we do situated learning wherever we are situated, based on our own self-efficacy, the feedback that we get, and the quality of the environment that we're in. So where we are matters when it comes to learning. So I think that we do need to pay more attention to helping students to learn, mainly because, for example, I was very fortunate. I'm a scientist. Originally, I came up in a science household. I had a maths teacher father, and I've got a sister with a PhD in maths who's made a career out of it. So I had that science background and came into it that way. Now, I just so happen to have two children, one of whom is a musician. Now, he would not have gone through a conventional schooling route, and in the end, we sent him to an unconventional university to study with James Morrison. Very fortunate. That was more luck than judgment, and there were some aspects of schooling that he struggled with, and that was because he was fortunate he came across a great teacher who understood his learning style. So I think that's something we need to pay attention to. If we're going to an extent force STEM as the true way, we need to be careful that we don't create casualties along the way for those who are naturally predisposed to artistic skills. And that was the late Sir Ken Robinson's argument, that we need to be careful. And if you think about it, some of the great creative minds that are out there, people like Tim Brown, the chairman of IDEO, he got through because he went through art school, he went through an arts education. So that's what we've got to be careful of in teaching, and we've got to pay attention to how students learn. I think artificial intelligence and related technologies is a real opportunity to do that. And the other thing we've got to do is we've got to use technologies like this to get some of the blessed administration out of the teacher's way at university and at school level too. Far too much bureaucracy at the moment worldwide, not just Australia, not just New Zealand, not just the UK. It applies in most developed countries, or so-called developed countries. In terms of teaching lecturers how to teach, yes, we have some excellent online and blended programs that we could recommend, but we may do a plug later, but not right now. I don't think it's commensurate to do so. But one of the issues I think we have to come to terms with in a lot of universities, particularly a lot of higher education providers, is that not enough staff are trained teachers. Most staff have a PhD, and that's entirely appropriate in higher education as far as possible. With some notable exceptions, people should have a PhD, or a doctorate of some description. I could not agree more. At the same time, not only do the standards in Australia require that they essentially require that they be trained teachers, but they should be trained teachers. And I'd like to see that enforced far more, not for the sake of it and not to be petty and not to see the standards enforced, but because it's the right thing to do, both by the students and by our academic colleagues. Because some of our academic colleagues, we've all seen them, some of them drown when they get to the classroom and they fight to survive. Much better to get them educated. I mean, we require teachers in secondary school to basically have a 5-6 year education in Australia and similar elsewhere. purely in terms of teaching. We don't do the same with university teachers. That concerns me. That also needs to extend out to people who do training courses too. And although we have that covered in Australia with RTOs. But yes, there are lots of good online blended programs we can recommend, John, to you. Any more questions that people want to pick up? Alan, please.
I was just going to say, Clive, while Zoom is still doing a bit of machine learning and doesn't quite realize that you're not sharing your screen anymore, you might want to stop sharing your screen.
Oh.
We'll get a full picture of you.
There you go.
But
Sorry.
yes, you're exactly right. All that is part
That's
of
not
the
machine learning, that's operator error.
whichever way. One day it might be machine learning. One of the tensions I'm seeing is this challenge between, yes, teacher training and teacher development. Not only in terms of traditional face-to-face classroom teaching, but as we progress and move towards more online facilitation. But added to that, there's also this tension of students accepting those changes and becoming more comfortable with the fact that education is changing as we progress, and that it's not going to be the traditional classroom teaching that maybe their parents were used to or their grandparents were used to, and in many cases maybe even they've been used to in the past. Your comments there?
It is a significant issue. I'm very fortunate, and I've seen lots of different approaches to teaching, and I was very fortunate to spend a couple of years at Cambridge teaching on the undergraduate program there, which is a singular experience. If anybody else has done it, they'll know what I mean. In that you meet your students once a week, you have small class sizes, a small tutorial group size, genuine tutorial groups. You have between 6 and 10 students in a group, and you're holding a conversation. And bless them, most of them are pretty bright individuals as well. There's the range of abilities is much narrower in that. And then I've gone to other institutions which shall remain nameless, whereby a reasonable tutorial size is considered to be 45, and you try and half of the class are not perhaps as capable in English language as they should be. This is a while ago now. A lot of international standards have changed that. So it's a very different experience, first of all, in those settings. If we then add in the complexity of technology, then we've got an even bigger challenge. And it's something we're dealing with at HELI right now. Right now is something that we're giving a lot of thought to. Our fabulous course coordinator, Greg White, is really thinking this through. We have a conversation, I should think, every other day about this. And it's how do you engage the students? What are the things that you do to really make sure that they're properly engaged? We can't be on Zoom well, you could, but we can't be on Zoom every day. It doesn't fit with the model that we've got. So how do you ensure that students engage with a variety? Now you layer over the top of that people's different learning styles, then you begin to get a bit of an issue. And I see things going forward, not right now, not maybe next year, but in the near future, whereby organisations like HELI, who specialise in this particular subject area, will begin to make greater use of learning experience platforms so that students can get driven out of a conventional LMS and go off into this curated world that that their educator or the learning designer has put together for them, so they can begin to access different things. The biggest challenge in online is attrition. It's the single biggest challenge. It's improved a lot. I was reading a figure earlier when I was looking in another subject area. Apparently in the very early days, when Coursera started up, they had an 85% attrition rate in their MOOC courses. And that's a lot. I'm glad to say that we're not at that point, but it's the engagement piece. The other thing that makes me amuse me when colleagues said it to me at another university I worked at a little while ago was when we were moving to online teaching, I was buttonholed and I was told that we're only doing it because it's cheap. No, it isn't. I can tell you that for free. I suspect my chief executive officer will tell me that for free as well. It is not cheap. Online learning is not on the cheap. It's not an excuse to do, if you're going to do it properly and you're going to do the type of engagement we do, you can do elements of it in volume, but if you really want to get engaged learning and engaged learning properly, it's got to be very well managed, smaller groups of people to make it effective. The other thing that goes on as well, don't forget, is that you don't get some of the cues that you get, and I don't mean cues as in lines of people. I mean the actual visual and mental cues. I don't pick up the cues. So, example: if I was in a classroom, I would have known that my audio wasn't working, but because I'm basically talking to myself, and normally I have a sound monitor on, but my batteries are flat, I didn't know. Were I in a classroom, I would have known that. You can tell within a classroom setting if a student isn't really joining in that much. You can pick them up. You've got visual cues that you see. You don't necessarily get those in a virtual classroom. So it's a different experience. And that's why I say the biggest difference of all for me in this, and for the students too, is you've got to get the engagement right. One of the big things that's going on, I didn't mention it, the other tech that's important to us all at the moment is gamification. That's another important technology whereby you actually make learning, for want of a, well, I hope learning's fun, but you make it more akin to a technology that some students enjoy. Some students don't enjoy it. That's the other danger as well, is you've got to have the variety to enable them to do that. And some subjects will never fit 100% on into this sort of platform. Music is one. If you want to train musicians at some point, most musicians, you need to put them in a room together to make it work properly. Is my view. So it's a complex situation that we're in.
Absolutely. Listen, thank you for your comments, and I see Peter's just joined us there. Peter, have you? Would you like to add to Clive's thoughts?
Thanks, Alan. Look, I've been listening intently for 3 days now, and I've learned a lot. One of the things in the last 2 days that I thought was a very interesting comment, and it may have been when John Daly was speaking yesterday, but don't quote me on that. And there was sort of like, will we ever go back to how it was? And yes, I see Clive. No, we won't. We've learned so much in the last 6 to 9 months about teaching and learning that I think we're going to end up with something in the future that's very different. And if we don't embrace these technologies and the good things we've learned and bring back the things we miss, such as the work placements and they're things that we expect to come back. But if we embrace the other side of it, and even embrace perhaps some of the technologies that have helped us to do work placements in a different way, I think we'll be much stronger for it. So out of every bad or adverse situation, or adverse situation, I think comes tremendous promise and tremendous opportunity. So when I see what Clive's presenting here and thinking about what is going to be the new normal, that's what excites me.
Thanks very much, Peter, and I couldn't agree more. We had a very interesting speaker in another show that I take part in, 30-minute talks, and that was relating to virtual internships. And so that is happening, as I'm sure most people would be aware. And so, you know, that almost adds to what we're thinking. Something else, Clive, that sits in the back of my mind, because I understand some people's confidence and enthusiasm in adopting new technologies, and others' reluctance potentially. You know, wait to see how it all works before they become an adopter. Is there any technology in those that you've suggested today that you might say to the audience, this is where you might start? Because I guess looking at all of them, it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming. Is there any one technology that you might say, as an institution, if you're not doing this already, this is something that I suggest you look at?
I think online content is the answer to that. because online content, it might, now, you might not want everything you get off the shelf, but if you're starting up or you're doing something, it's going to give you a good base to start with. I think that is one of the very clear things. The other thing to say is that you are actually using some of that technology already. You just might not realize that you're using some of that technology already. Yeah. So some of the things that go on in the backgrounds are things like learning management systems, Canvas, Blackboard. They're already using artificial intelligence and big data techniques to actually refine their performance. So don't forget, Canvas and Blackboard are both worldwide phenomena. All right, they are all over the world. They're in just about every country of the world, and they are collecting data all of the time from the world, not personal data, not that sort of stuff, but they're looking at the performance of their system. Now they will be unable to do everything with that, but they're beginning to actually use it. So I think that's the way forward. The other thing I think is get some advice from somebody and start to use your data analytics to really help you with refining your performance of your organization. And you can get, there's plenty of help out there with that you can get.
Absolutely. I was going to say, you know, in terms of thinking, the data that's already available within organizations is a point that you might start at, using that data and using that data usefully in terms of making decisions. Thank you for that. And thank you, John, for another question for Dr. Ryan. What is the best way to help faculty organizations transition to this new normal, Peter?
Look, it's a great question. Look, I think what we've been doing this past 6 to 9 months, where our community knowledge has been increasing through webinars and other ways of connecting, I think we've got to keep doing this. We can't, when COVID's over, let's not stop connecting the way we're connecting. Let's not stop sharing the way we're sharing. And if we continue to do that, we'll learn from each other. I don't think I know what the new normal is yet, but I think together we're going to work out, and for each of us it'll be slightly different. But yes, my advice is let's not stop doing what we're doing. The ICE has played a critical role this year in bringing the members together, and we've been happy to be part of that through the webinars that we offer and others offer as well. And we're not intending to stop sharing in that way. And I hope that everyone else will continue to share. So I think what we've learned is how to build a community, a different sort of community. We've always had great communities, but we're not as isolationist as we once were. We can't travel, but we're seeing each other more often. Very strange that. So I'd like to think that we can keep doing that and refine it. We don't need to necessarily do it so often, but if we come together and share what's working for us, in terms of how we're applying technologies, how we're applying different ways of learning, as we've been doing, I think that'll be the way to go. So let's take the best of what we've learned in this last 6 months and continue to do that, and not just think it's an aberration. I think this is the new normal.
If I may, I think technology is the key to maintaining that new normal as well, Peter. I think that's absolutely on the money there with your comments. And I think what Zoom, but other connecting softwares, LinkedIn's a bit overdone, Facebook's a bit overdone, but within communities where we've actually got notice boards, forums, so on and so forth, I think they are crucial. Because they allow, the beauty of them is that they don't care about time zones. So you can actually have good asynchronous exchanges of communication across many different, and that's really important.
Yeah, I like Craig's question as well. In a world of increasing online learning, and I think that's probably going to be what's happening, what is the role of the institution? Well, we've still got a very important role, and Clive hit the nail on the head. We're the curators. we need institutions to curate the knowledge. We're also going to remain the gatekeepers. In other words, we're going to be the ones who assess and determine whether or not a student meets the criteria that we've set, and also meets the criteria set by our regulatory frameworks. So we're not going to give someone a bachelor's degree or a master's degree unless they've actually earned it. So whilst we may be interacting with students in a different way, curating their learning, supporting their learning, but not necessarily being a talking head in a room, there's still all of that other very important stuff that goes around that we'll continue to do. And in fact, if the institution doesn't do that well, they'll find themselves in all sorts of trouble. So I see the role of institutions even more important, because it is really key that we do maintain the standards of what is a master's degree, what is a bachelor degree, and don't let those standards slip, because otherwise we'll end up with not the outcomes we want. So I hope that sort of answers your question there, Craig.
It does. Can I just come back to you on that, Peter? Because the challenge there that sort of came up in the session yesterday is that if we are curating knowledge, drawing on different resources, so we're saying we're not the experts, so we'll use this package or this program developed by this company or that institution or by this leading academic, and we'll compile it and we'll curate it within this program, or you can use other resources. So we increase flexibility, we increase use of other resources. I'm just wondering whether students will go, hold on, so you're not delivering this, you're just pulling this together from other resources and packaging this, and so what am I paying you for? Will the value proposition to students be maintained? Because at the moment the value proposition is our lectures, our content to you, and you know whether the students will begin to question that.
Yes, it will be a challenge for us if students begin to question the value. I can assure you that to package and curate good online learning is far more expensive than putting something in the classroom. So as Clive said earlier, I would be the one who would say that. Now, we know that's the case. So how do we convince our students that what they're receiving is in fact superior to having a talking head in a classroom? Now, remember, I've been in many classrooms where the talking head has not been the expert. And in fact, you know, the yellowed notes came out and they've said the same thing they've said for the last 10 years. They're not active in scholarship. Now, those days are definitely gone. I'd like to think that if we can, it's the way we package. It's the way we interact with students, remembering when the students come into the sessions with their educator, facilitator, whatever you want to call it, and they know that the student support person is contacting them regularly to say, how are you going? And someone's always contacting them. That's not what they got before. They would turn up at a lecture, they'd go away. If they ever interacted with anybody from the institution, it could have, sometimes it was a miracle. Now, so it's not the same for all institutions. Some institutions already have a very interactive campus life. And I understand there are institutions where students live on campus, but looking at the normal, everyday run-of-the-mill institution delivering, say, a business course, there was very little interaction. I think that's changing. Now, I'm hoping that we can build a value proposition around the fact that, well, you might not come and sit in the classroom, but by golly, you'll keep hearing from us and hearing from us and hearing from us. And if you've got any problems, we can help you. So I'm hoping we can turn that around.
Absolutely. Just one final point that then relates back to John's point, because this is like an evolving and changing role for the academic, isn't it? So you know, there clearly is sort of a function there for training and development. So sorry, Clive.
No, that's cool. Absolutely correct. You're quite right. My little pet theory is this, and I've been thinking about this for a while. I must write this down somewhere. I think what we're seeing through technology is we're actually reverting to where education came from. This is what we're beginning to see. Where education came from was indeed the sage, but the Sage was working with small groups of people and educating them and personalising that education to their requirements. So if Harry needed to properly illustrate a T in a Bible, whereas Bert needed to illustrate an S, the Sage would show Harry what he needed to do and then show Bert what he needed to do. And the point is, what these technologies will ultimately enable us to do is to better tailor education to individual requirements, which has been taken away by the massification of it. I mean, my starting year in accounting, I was reflecting on this the other day, at Western Sydney was 2,500 students in a class on accounting, not all in one room, obviously, but nevertheless 2,500 students. There isn't any way, even if you throw dozens of tutors at that, that you can really carefully individualize. But if you use smart tools over time, you can actually begin to pull education back in and personalize it. And that, I think, that's what really excites. It's why I'm still in this game. I think that as we get to do that, we can start to focus in more and more on individual requirements. And the same applies to educators. And educators will need to get, I think a lot of educators are tired, frankly, and they're tired because of volume. They're tired because of, and volume doesn't allow you to get your own inspiration into what you're delivering. Because of the numbers game we've got to play. I mean, don't forget, the other thing is we've got programs that can mark essays. Now that, I'm not sure about that one, but nevertheless, that technology is coming. I'm not sure how wise that is, but technology can, it'll enable us to go back to the future is what I'm saying.
I think it might also be important to reflect on a comment from Evangeline Timbang from UST in the Philippines. Institutions may share best global practices, but still consider their respective missions and visions, considering national and local practices, traditions, and cultures. You know, if we look at education as being one size fits all vanilla, without the localization, without tradition, without the culture, I think we're failing as well. So absolutely.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. That what we learn, we need to take back and contextualize. So we must always remember that we're talking here very generically. I'm hoping there's some good ideas there, but then how do we go back and apply those ideas in our own context? And certainly it's very different in different disciplines and different in different countries. But I still think we have a lot to learn from each other, and I'll stand by that.
There's another important thing, Alan, as well, which I think is going on institutionally, and that's going to be the role of organisations like the tech giants and some of the big animation studios. And for example, I always use the example of Pixar when I talk about creativity. And if you read the book on Pixar, I forgot what it's called now, but Creativity Inc. by its former chief executive officer. And essentially Pixar is a university without undergraduate students. Basically, that's what it is, because there's all this scholarly activity going on in working out how to do better algorithms for this, draw a better picture for that. And it's almost, it's got the feel, when you read the book, of an education institution without undergraduate students in it. Okay, I think that the tech giants, for all of their power, have got an important role to play in education. One thing that does worry me is they're taking a lot of graduate students out of conventional higher education, if I can use that expression, and they're not completing PhDs before they go in to those organisations. So I think that's an interesting dynamic that we've got to watch and see what happens with those.
Absolutely. Maybe on that note, everybody, I mean, I'm mindful of time. We said we'd like to wrap the session up within an hour. We're at 5:10 now. Are there any closing comments from yourself, Peter, Clive, maybe Craig, if you've got any comments that you'd like to add to closing the session?
Alan, I think maybe a slight mention of the courses that HELI runs and how.
Yes, I was going to say I'll do a marketing.
Well, yeah. Well, it's just that it's funny that what we've tended to focus on is trying to build professionals for the new normal, if you like. We actually started doing this 5 years ago, and I hope to think that we were a little bit prescient in our thinking to think that we would need these professionals in the future. Of course, circumstances have proved to be true, but I'll leave that to you to explain that, Alan, because I think that's important. That there's also the ICE members. I think we've still got that discount running as well. So through the Business Alliance partnership.
If I could just say, it's been a pleasure to present to the group. Some great questions, some really good debate as well towards the end. I think the important thing to do is to not be overwhelmed by what is coming down the tracks. It's here and now, but to embrace it and to take the best of it, I think, and to try and improve professional practice. That would be that's always my guide. If it's useful, use it. If it's not, don't. But I think there is a lot out there that will be very useful and make life, I wouldn't say easier, but it will make life more amenable and better in the virtual classroom. Thanks, Alan. That's it from me. Thank you, everybody.
Pleasure. Listen, if I can just take this opportunity to thank you and Peter and Craig, because I'm a golfer, I might take this putt and you can have the last putt if you don't mind, and close the session up. But as Dr. Ryan just mentioned a moment ago, and was mentioned a little earlier in the session from John Daly, yes, HELI itself offers courses that can certainly help you in your own professional development. So a course that we started off out with offering is the Graduate Certificate in Higher Education Academic Practice, a course that's specifically designed to align people that have scholarly, academic and so on, but may never have gone through the practices of learning and teaching and becoming a good teacher in the higher education space. So that course is available. It's a 4-unit course available online, offered to the ICE members. And of course, as Dr. Ryan mentioned, we offer a discount through the ICE for anybody that's interested in the course. And then the later course that's come on just recently is our Masters in E-Education, the Masters in E-Learning, sorry, the MEL. And that course builds in the grad cert, but is also a course that looks at all of the concepts that we've spoken about today, including technologies, learning in the future, offering online education, learning and teaching, scholarship, teaching and learning design, and so on. All of that's available on our website for you to have a look at at your leisure. So we would encourage the ICE members to look at that. We believe that HELI is for want of a better word, expert in the space at the moment, and this is an area that we're trying to own. And would encourage you to speak with us if you have any interest in any of the HELI courses. And from myself, thank you everybody for taking time out for joining us in this workshop, and thank you to the ICE members for all the good work that you do. And it's great to see that the ICE is as active as it is under the guidance and leadership of yourself, Craig. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Clive. What I've taken from that is we talked yesterday about the delivery of online education, how to deliver it, and Pete also sort of provided us with some of the tools to do that. This session has taken us very much into the domain of not just delivering online learning, but managing learning in their online age, if you like, and I found that really fascinating, because there's, as we've highlighted, there's all sorts of opportunities out there, but all sorts of challenges that come along with it. And I think hopefully it's given our attendees some real food for thought, but also maybe some opportunities of how we can use the network to work together to take advantage of the opportunities and develop them whilst hopefully avoiding the challenges or ameliorating the challenges. So thank you very much for that session. I really enjoyed it. Really stimulated by all the discussions, and yeah, look forward to working with HELI in the future on these issues. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Craig. And for those members that weren't with us at the pre-session discussion, don't forget we are offering another webinar on the 1st of December. So we look forward to seeing you all on the 1st of December for another HELI the ICE free webinar. And from myself, thank you very much. And wherever you are in the world, good evening and good morning.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Okay.
Or good
Thanks a lot.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Good
Cheers
evening.
now.
Just let us
And,
actually put that link to the Business Alliance partners in the chat box, and that actually links out to the free webinars as well. So if you look through there, that will give you all the benefits from our Business Alliance partners, including the webinars and the discount offered through HELI.
And just finally, I'd like to say I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the AGM.
Yes, indeed.
Please don't miss that. It's going to be a cracker.
Thanks, Peter.
And
Okay.
just finally, thank you, Jane, for the organisation.
Pleasure. Lovely to see
Very
you all.
much, Jane. Yes, thank you.
Thanks to everybody.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.